None of us know what this verdict is going to be. I'd like to please ask everyone that as difficult as this has been for many of you, I'd like for you all to please refrain from outbursts of any sort. I know that it's a very emotionally charged situation, and I understand it. I can never place my shoes in yours, but please respect the process and the outcome. Members of the jury, did you select the presiding juror?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please stand. Madam Presiding Juror, did the jury of your peers, 12 of you, did you deliberate in accordance with my instructions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was a unanimous verdict reached? Was a unanimous verdict reached?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was the verdict forms filled out in accordance with my instructions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you sign them?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did your signature reflect the decision, the unanimous decision of this jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please hand the verdict form to the bailiff. Thank you for your service. In cause number 2018 CRA 852D1, in the case of the State of Texas versus Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles, the jury has returned a unanimous verdict. I'm about to read the verdict of this jury on punishment as to count number 1. Special issue number 1 on count 1. Whether there is a probability that the defendant, Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles, would commit criminal act of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson. Answers to special issue number 2. Whether taking into consideration all the evidence, including the circumstances of the offense, the defendant's character and background, and the personal moral culpability of the defendant, there is a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than a death sentence be imposed. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Verdict on punishment as to count number 2. Special issue number 1. Whether there is a probability that the defendant, Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles, would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. As to special issue number 2. Whether taking into consideration all the evidence, including the circumstances of the offense, the defendant's character and background, and the personal moral culpability of the defendant, there is a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than a death sentence be imposed. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson of this jury. Thank you. You may be seated. Members of the jury, you heard me read your verdict. It is a unanimous verdict. I'd like for you all to raise your right hand, the members of the jury, not the alternates, who in fact will indicate to me that this is your individual verdict. Please raise your right hand now. Thank you. The record reflects that all 12 members of the jury have raised their right hand. Members of the jury, thank you very much for your service. In a minute, I'm going to ask Mr. Rubio to send you back into the jury room for some final words and some documents that we need to also give you. While you do that, I am going to, in fact, do the sentencing. As a result of your verdict, I now need to sentence the defendant. So you don't have to be here when that occurs. You can start heading back into the deliberation room and wait for me there while I do that, or you may choose to remain, however you'd like. You'd like to go back or stay?
We'll remain, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will you bring the defendant forward, please? Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles, you heard me announce the verdict of the jury with regard to both counts of this indictment. It is now my job to sentence you in accordance with that indictment, with that verdict. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
The jury answered both counts 1 and 2 with regard to question number 1, yes. The jury also answered as to both counts 1 and 2 on special issue number 2, yes. As a result of that, after being found guilty by this jury of 2 counts of capital murder, and after giving us the verdict that they have just announced, it is my job now to pronounce sentence. As to count 1 of capital murder, and as a result of the sentence of the verdict of the jury, you will be sentenced on count 1 as to capital murder to a term of life without the possibility of parole. As to count 2, after being found guilty of capital murder and after hearing the verdict from the jury on the phase 2 of this trial, you will also serve a term of life without the possibility of parole. Your sentence will start immediately. And I'll ask the Sheriff's Office to take you back to the Webb County Jail to be processed in accordance with our procedures and transported to the facility as soon as possible. Court cost?
$945.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Right over. Is there victim impact?